When I was 8 years old, my entire world shattered in one single night. My parents were killed in what everyone called a tragic accident. I don't remember all the details of that night. I was asleep at my grandma's house when it happened. I just remember being woken up by my grandmother's trembling hands and her tear-streaked face as she whispered, "Sweetheart, there's been an accident." Even now, years later, that memory feels like a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my life, I thought my story was simple. My parents were gone, my grandma was my hero, and somehow, we managed to keep going. She raised me in a small, cozy town in Pennsylvania, in the same old house where my mom had grown up. Grandma was the kind of person everyone loved. She baked cookies for the neighbors, always showed up to school events, and never missed a single one of my soccer games. The other kids would sometimes tease me, saying my grandma was too involved, but honestly, I didn't mind. After losing my parents, I clung to her like a lifeline. She made me feel safe when the world felt unpredictable and cruel. Growing up, I thought she was perfect. She never raised her voice, always had a warm smile, and somehow knew exactly what to say whenever I was upset. If I got a bad grade or had a fight with my friends, she'd sit me down at our worn-out kitchen table, pour us both cups of tea, and say, "Everything will make sense someday, Emmy. Just breathe." Back then, I didn't question anything. I didn't wonder why we rarely talked about my parents or why grandma would tense up whenever I asked too many questions about that night. I just trusted her. But as I grew older, little cracks started to form in the perfect image I had of my life. The first time I noticed something strange was when I was about 14. I'd been cleaning the attic, mostly because grandma asked me to help get rid of old junk. While rummaging through dusty boxes, I came across a photograph. It was my mom, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. He wasn't my dad. They looked close. Too close. I remember running downstairs, waving the photo around, asking grandma who the man was. For a second, just a split second, her face turned pale. Then she snatched the photo from my hand and shoved it into a drawer. "Some things are better left in the past, Emily," she said sharply in a tone I had never heard before. "Go wash your hands for dinner." It was the first time she'd ever dismissed me like that. From then on, I started noticing little things I had missed before. How she'd get defensive when I mentioned my parents. How she'd avoid certain dates on the calendar. How she never, ever let me into the locked cabinet in her bedroom. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. She loved me, and that was enough. By the time I graduated high school, grandma was getting older and frailer. Her hands trembled when she sewed, and she started forgetting things, like where she left her keys or whether she turned the stove off. It scared me, but I tried to stay strong for her, just like she had for me all those years. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a warm summer morning when I found her collapsed on the kitchen floor. My heart dropped as I screamed her name and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The paramedics rushed in, their voices calm but urgent, and before I knew it, she was being wheeled out on a stretcher. At the hospital, the doctor told me she'd suffered a massive stroke. I sat by her bedside for hours, holding her hand, whispering how much I loved her. At one point, her cloudy eyes opened just a crack, and she squeezed my hand weakly. With a trembling voice, she said, "Emily, the box, closet, truth." Then her eyes fluttered shut, and she never woke up again. I was numb for days after she passed. Friends and neighbors stopped by with casseroles and flowers, but their words blurred together into meaningless noise. I couldn't process that the woman who had been my entire world was gone. After the funeral, I returned to our now empty house, the silence almost suffocating. That's when her final words replayed in my mind. The box, closet, truth. I knew exactly which closet she meant, the one in her bedroom that had always been locked. For the first time in my life, I found the courage to break in. I rummaged through her dresser until I found a small brass key hidden beneath her socks. My heart pounded as I unlocked the closet door, half expecting to find nothing but old clothes and mothballs. Instead, there it was. a wooden box about the size of a showbox, sitting on the top shelf. My hands shook as I pulled it down. It was heavy, heavier than I expected, and secured with a small latch. When I opened it, I didn't just find old trinkets or keepsakes. Inside were letters, photographs, and a single, yellowed newspaper clipping with a headline that made my blood run cold. Local couple killed in mysterious house fire, foul play suspected. It was about my parents. I stared at the clipping, my mind racing. I had always been told their deaths were an accident. A random, tragic fire caused by faulty wiring. But this said someone might have caused it. My heart pounded as I rifled through the other contents of the box. Among them was a letter addressed to me, written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. As I unfolded the paper, tears blurred my vision. It began with words that would change my life forever. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and you are ready to know the truth. My hands trembled so violently that the paper nearly slipped through my fingers. I sank down onto Grandma's bed, clutching the letter like it was my only anchor in a storm. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, like she had struggled to finish every word. A lump formed in my throat as I forced myself to keep reading, even though a part of me wanted to slam the box shut and pretend none of this was happening. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, it means I am gone, and you are ready to know the truth. I never wanted to keep this from you, but I did what I thought was best to protect you. I have carried this secret for so many years, and the weight of it has been crushing me. I only hope you can forgive me one day. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away. I had to know. The night your parents died was no accident. The fire wasn't caused by faulty wiring or bad luck. Someone set it on purpose. Someone wanted them gone. I gasped so loudly that it echoed in the room. My entire body went cold, my mind racing back to that horrible night. I had always pictured my parents' last moments as some kind of freak tragedy, smoke filling the house, them desperately trying to escape. I'd cried myself to sleep so many nights imagining it. But now I had to face the possibility that someone killed them. I squeezed my eyes shut and continued reading, even as my chest tightened with every word. Emily, I know who did it. And I need you to understand why I kept silent all these years. I froze. She knew. Your father, John Carter, was a good man, a good husband and father. But he got mixed up with people he shouldn't have. He borrowed money from the wrong person, a man who didn't forgive debts. When your father couldn't pay him back, that man made threats. He said he would hurt your family. Your mother wanted to go to the police, but your father refused. He was too proud and too afraid. I could barely breathe. My dad? The man who had carried me on his shoulders and taught me how to ride a bike. In trouble with dangerous people? It didn't seem real. But Grandma's words kept flowing like a knife slicing deeper and deeper. On the night of the fire, your parents were arguing. Your mother wanted to take you and leave town. But before they could act, someone came to the house. That someone was your uncle, my son Peter. I dropped the letter like it had burned me. My uncle? Peter had always been a ghost in my life. I knew of him, but we were never close. Grandma rarely talked about him, and whenever she did, her face tightened with a kind of sadness I didn't understand. He didn't come to birthdays, never sent Christmas cards. I just assumed he didn't care. And now I was reading that he was somehow involved in my parents' deaths. My hands shook as I snatched the letter back up, desperate for answers. Peter wasn't a bad man, Emily. He was troubled, lost. When he heard about your father's death, he tried to step in and help. But instead of fixing things, he made them worse. He confronted the man your father owed money to, and in a moment of rage and fear, everything spiraled out of control. I clutched my chest, my heart beat so loud it drowned out the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. That night, Peter went to your parents' house. I don't know exactly what happened. He wouldn't tell me everything, but he came to me afterward, shaking and covered in soot. He said there had been a fight, and somehow, the house caught fire. He swore he didn't mean for it to happen. He swore he never wanted to hurt anyone. My vision blurred again as hot tears streamed down my face. My own uncle had been there. He had been there when my parents died. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the letter to pieces. But some part of me needed to know the rest. When Peter told me, I begged him to go to the police. But he was terrified. The man your father owed money to was powerful and dangerous, and Peter feared that if he came forward, you would be next. He made me promise to protect you, to keep you safe at any cost. So I lied. I told everyone it was an accident. I told you what you needed to hear. I slammed the letter down and buried my face in my hands. Everything I thought I knew, my entire life, was unraveling. Grandma hadn't just been my protector. She had been my jailer, locking me inside a carefully crafted illusion. Emily, I know you must hate me now. But please believe me when I say I did what I thought was right. I raised you the best I could, even though every day I carried the guilt of what I had done. If you want to know the full truth, you'll find Peter. He's been living in a cabin near Ridgewood Lake all these years, hiding from the world. You deserve to hear his side of the story. My breath caught in my throat. Peter was alive? He had been here, all this time, just a few towns over? I skimmed the last few lines of the letter, my vision swimming. You are stronger than you know, Emily. Whatever you choose to do next, remember that I love you. I always have, and I always will. Grandma. The letter slipped from my hands and fluttered to the floor. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at nothing. My parents' deaths. My uncle's involvement. Grandma's lies. It felt like I was drowning, my entire life pulled out from under me in an instant. When I finally stood, my legs felt like jelly. I glanced back at the wooden box, its contents spilling out like a crime scene. The photograph of my mom with the strange man. The newspaper clipping. The letter. The truth wasn't just ugly, it was dangerous. I could almost hear Grandma's voice in my head, soft and trembling. Keep her safe, Peter. Keep her safe. My hands curled into fists. I had spent my whole life believing I was safe, protected by the woman I trusted most. But now I realized safety had been a lie too. And there was only one person left who could give me real answers. Uncle Peter. If he was truly living out at Ridgewood Lake, then I had to find him. Even if part of me didn't want to hear what he had to say, I needed to. Because no matter how painful the truth was, I couldn't keep living in this fog of half-truths and secrets. I grabbed my car keys from the nightstand and shoved the letter into my backpack. As I headed toward the door, I paused, glancing around the house one last time. This place, filled with the scent of Grandma's cookies and the echoes of my childhood laughter, suddenly felt like a stranger's home. Everything had changed. And I had a terrible feeling that once I found Peter, there would be no going back. The drive to Ridgewood Lake felt like something out of a nightmare. The sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, but I barely noticed. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white, and my mind spun with every possible scenario of what I might find. Was Peter really there? Would he even talk to me if he was? And what if Grandma was wrong about him? Not just about the fire, but about everything. Every bump in the road jolted me back to reality. I kept hearing Grandma's final words over and over again. The box. Closet. Truth. The truth. My whole life, I'd been taught that truth was a black and white thing. Good and evil. Right and wrong. But now, staring down this twisting road through dark woods, it felt more like a tangled knot I wasn't sure I wanted to untangle. By the time I reached the lake, night had fallen. The water shimmered under the moonlight, eerily still, surrounded by thick trees that seemed to lean in closer the deeper I drove. Grandma's letter had mentioned a cabin at the far end of the lake. Sure enough, after about a mile of dirt road, I saw a dim light glowing through the trees. My heart hammered in my chest. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to gather my courage. This man, my uncle, was practically a stranger who had been there the night my parents died. a stranger who might have killed them. But he was also the only person left who could give me answers. I forced myself to get out of the car and walk up the narrow, creaking porch steps. The cabin was old and weathered, its wooden siding warped with age. A single lantern flickered near the window. I raised my hand to knock, but before I could, the door swung open. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, with a scruffy beard and deep lines etched into his face. His eyes, dark and haunted, locked onto mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was so heavy it felt like it could crush me. Finally, his voice came out low and rough, like gravel. "Emily?" Hearing my name in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. "Yes," I managed to say, my throat dry. I'm Emily. Your niece." He rubbed the back of his neck, glancing past me toward the dark woods. "I didn't think you'd ever come here." "I didn't think I would either," I said. "But Grandma, she left me a letter. She told me about you. About what happened." Peter's face twisted, a flash of pain crossing his features. He stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. The cabin smelled like smoke and pine, with old furniture scattered haphazardly around the room. A wood-burning stove crackled in the corner, casting flickering shadows across the walls. I sat on a worn-out couch while Peter paced the floor like a caged animal. "She told you," he muttered, almost to himself. "I can't believe she finally told you." I gripped the strap of my backpack tightly. "She said you were there the night my parents died. She said it wasn't an accident." His shoulders stiffened. He didn't look at me. "That's true." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Even though I'd read it in the letter, hearing it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't ready for. "Then tell me what happened," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "Please. I've spent my whole life living in the dark. I deserve to know the truth." Peter finally turned to face me. His eyes glistened with something raw guilt, maybe, or sorrow. "I didn't go there to hurt anyone," he said, his voice breaking. "I went to protect them. To protect you." I swallowed hard. "From who?" "Grandma said something about Dad owing money." Peter nodded, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "Your dad got mixed up with a man named Victor Hale. He ran an underground gambling ring and loan sharking business. Dangerous stuff. Your dad was desperate. He wanted to pay off the mortgage, give your mom a better life. But when he couldn't pay Victor back, things got ugly." My stomach churned. This sounded like something out of a crime show, not my family's real life. "Why didn't they go to the police?" I asked. Peter gave me a bitter laugh. "Victor had half the local cops in his pocket. Going to them would have been suicide." I shivered. This was worse than I'd imagined. That night, Peter continued, his voice dropping lower. "Your mom called me, terrified. She said Victor had been by the house, making threats. I grabbed my truck and drove over there as fast as I could." He paused, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. The first drag seemed to steady him, but only slightly. "When I got there, your parents were in the middle of a fight. Your dad wanted to stand his ground. Your mom wanted to take you and run. I told them we had to leave, right then, but your dad refused. He said he wasn't going to let Victor control his life." Peter's voice cracked, and he turned away from me, staring at the wall like he couldn't bear to see my face. Then Victor showed up. My breath caught. "Victor was there?" Peter nodded slowly. "He brought 2 of his guys. It all happened so fast. There was shouting, pushing. I tried to keep them away from your mom, but..." He stopped, choking on the words. I gripped the edge of the couch, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. "But what, Peter?" His next words were barely a whisper. "There was a struggle near the fireplace. One of Victor's men had a gun. I lunged at him, and somehow the curtain caught fire. The whole room went up like kindling. Your mom screamed for me to get you out of the house, but the smoke, God, there was so much smoke." I covered my mouth, fighting back a sob. "They didn't make it out," I whispered. Peter shook his head slowly, his shoulders trembling. No, I tried, Emily. I swear to you, I tried. But the fire spread so fast. There was nothing I could do. For a moment, we both sat in silence. The only sound the crackling of the stove. Finally, I found my voice. If Victor was there, why didn't you go to the police after? Why did Grandma say you went into hiding? Peter's jaw clenched. Because Victor threatened you. My whole body went cold. Me? You were just a kid, Emily. He said if I told anyone what happened, he'd come after you next. And I believed him. That man. He wasn't bluffing. So Grandma and I made a deal. I'd disappear, and she'd raise you like nothing ever happened. It was the only way to keep you safe. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to process his words. All these years, I said hoarsely, you let me believe you didn't care about me. That you just abandoned me. Peter knelt in front of me, his rough hands clasping mine. I didn't abandon you, Emily. I was protecting you the only way I knew how. If Victor thought I was dead, or gone for good, maybe he'd leave you alone. I stared into his eyes, searching for any hint of a lie. But all I saw was pain and regret. Victor's still out there, isn't he? I asked softly. Peter nodded. Last I heard, he moved his operation a few towns over. He keeps a low profile these days, but trust me, he hasn't forgotten about us. A chill ran down my spine. What if he finds out I know the truth? Peter's grip on my hands tightened. Then we'll make sure he doesn't. But Emily, you have to promise me something. Don't go looking for him. Don't try to confront him. This man is dangerous. I nodded slowly, though deep down, a tiny spark of defiance flickered inside me. Victor Hale had destroyed my family. And if he thought I was going to spend the rest of my life hiding like a scared little girl, he was dead wrong. I barely slept that night. After everything Peter had told me, I lay awake on the worn-out couch in his cabin, staring at the cracked ceiling while my mind replayed the horrifying images he'd painted. My parents arguing, Victor showing up with his men, the fire raging out of control. Every creak of the cabin, every distant hoot of an owl outside, made me jump. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. Peter's voice echoed in my head like a broken record. Don't go looking for him, Emily. Victor is dangerous. But how could I not? Victor Hale hadn't just ruined my parents' lives, he had stolen mine too. Because of him, I grew up without a mom and dad. Because of him, Grandma spent her final years drowning in guilt. And because of him, Peter had been forced to live like a ghost, hiding in this lonely cabin while I spent my entire childhood believing he didn't care. The rage that built inside me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was hot and sharp, burning away the fear that had paralyzed me earlier. I needed to do something. I couldn't just sit here, trapped in the same silence Grandma and Peter had lived with for decades. If Victor was still out there, still hurting people, then someone had to stop him. And maybe that someone was me. By the time dawn broke, my decision was made. Peter stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, clearly exhausted. He poured himself a cup of bitter coffee and glanced at me warily. You didn't sleep, he said, stating the obvious. I shook my head. I couldn't. He sighed heavily, sinking into a chair across from me. I figured. It's a lot to take in. That's an understatement, I muttered. Peter sipped his coffee in silence for a moment before setting the mug down and leaning forward. Emily, I meant what I said last night. The best thing you can do now is go home, live your life, and let me handle this. I stared at him, anger bubbling beneath my skin. Handle it? You've been hiding out here for almost 20 years, Peter. You're not handling anything, you're running. His face darkened. You don't understand. That man isn't someone you just deal with. Victor Hale has money, connections, and no conscience. If he even suspects you know the truth, I don't care. I snapped, my voice breaking. He's already taken everything from me. My parents. My childhood. Even you. I won't let him keep controlling my life. Peter slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. Do you think I wanted this, Emily? Do you think I liked hiding while you grew up without me? His voice cracked, raw with emotion. I've been living with this guilt every single day. But if staying hidden meant you were safe, then it was worth it. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced myself to stay strong. Safe isn't enough anymore, I said quietly. I need answers. I need justice. Peter looked at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched. Finally, he exhaled, shoulders slumping in defeat. You sound just like your mother, he said softly. Stubborn as hell. Something in my chest ached at those words. I barely remembered my mom's voice, her laugh, the way she used to tuck me into bed. But to hear that I was like her, it was bittersweet. Peter rubbed his face, looking older and more tired than ever. If you're really serious about this, you need to be careful. Victor has eyes everywhere. You can't just march into town asking questions. I nodded. I get it. I won't be reckless. He gave me a skeptical look but didn't argue further. I have a contact, he said finally. A guy named Mason who used to work for Victor before he got out. He might know where Victor is hiding these days. My pulse quickened. Where can I find him? There's a mechanic shop on the edge of town. Mason works there now, under the radar. But Emily. Peter's gaze bored into mine. You go there. You don't mention my name. Don't even mention yours unless you have to. Just be careful. I will, I promised, though my heart was pounding with both fear and excitement. As I left the cabin, Peter grabbed my arm. If something feels wrong, you walk away. Promise me. I hesitated, then nodded. Promise. The mechanic shop was a dusty, run-down place surrounded by rusted cars and oil drums. The air smelled of gasoline and burnt rubber. I parked my car and sat there for a moment, steadying my breathing. This was it, the first step toward finally confronting Victor Hale. Inside, the shop was dimly lit and cluttered with tools. A burly man in his 40s was hunched over an engine, his hands black with grease. Excuse me, I said, my voice wavering slightly. He turned, eyeing me with suspicion. You lost or something, kid? No, I said quickly. I'm looking for someone. I was told you might be able to help. His brow furrowed. Who told you that? My mind raced. Peter had warned me not to mention his name. A friend, I said vaguely. Look, I just need to know if you've heard of a man named Victor Hale. The mechanic's entire demeanor changed. His eyes went cold, and he crossed his arms. You don't want to be asking about him. Please, I said, taking a step closer. It's important. He hurt my family. I need to find him. For a moment, Mason just stared at me, his jaw working. Then he glanced around the shop like he was checking for eavesdroppers. You're either real brave or real stupid, he muttered. Probably both. My heart skipped a beat. So you do know him. Mason sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. Victor doesn't stay in one place for long. Last I heard, he's running his operation out of an old warehouse near the train tracks on the edge of Millbrook. But listen to me, if you go there, you won't be coming back the same. That man chews people up and spits them out. A chill ran through me, but I forced myself to nod. Thank you, I said sincerely. As I turned to leave, Mason called after me. Hey, kid. Whatever you're planning, don't go alone. I gave him a tight smile, but didn't answer. Because deep down, I knew I couldn't risk bringing anyone else into this. This was my fight. When I returned to the cabin, Peter was pacing the floor like a restless tiger. The second he saw me, he stopped dead. Where the hell have you been? He demanded. I found Mason, I said. He told me where Victor is. Peter's face went pale. Emily, no. This is exactly what I told you not to do. I didn't tell him anything about you, I said quickly. And he warned me to stay away, but Peter, I can't. Not anymore. Peter's hands balled into fists. You don't understand what you're walking into. Victor won't just threaten you, he'll kill you. Then let him try, I snapped, surprising even myself with the venom in my voice. I've been living in fear my entire life because of him. I won't do it anymore. Peter's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, he looked utterly broken. You're so much like your mother, he whispered. She would have fought too. Something in his tone made me pause. What do you mean? Peter's gaze was haunted as he met mine. The night of the fire. Your mom wasn't just trying to protect you. She was trying to stop Victor. She was planning to go to the FBI. She thought she could end it. My breath caught. She was going to turn him in? Yes. But she didn't make it in time. The white-hot fury surged through me. My mother had died trying to do the right thing, and Victor had gotten away with it. I have to finish what she started, I said, my voice steady with determination. Peter shook his head, his eyes glistening. If you go to that warehouse, you might not come back. Then at least I'll know I tried, I said, turning toward the door. Emily, Peter shouted, but I didn't stop. Because deep down, I knew there was no turning back now. I was going to confront Victor Hale. And I was going to get the answers my mother never lived to find. The night air was sharp and cold as I drove toward Millbrook. The highway was nearly empty, my headlights cutting through the darkness like two glowing swords. Every mile brought me closer to Victor Hale and closer to the truth I had been chasing my entire life. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my fingers ached. My heart was pounding, but beneath the fear was a fiery determination that burned hotter than anything I'd ever felt. My mother had died trying to stop Victor. Grandma had lived her whole life in silence, protecting me from the truth. And Peter had spent nearly 2 decades in hiding, bearing the weight of a crime he hadn't fully committed. It all ended tonight. The warehouse mason had described loomed ahead, an ugly, hulking shape against the night sky. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, and a single flickering light above a side door made it look like something out of a horror movie. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, every step crunching softly on the gravel. My breath puffed out in white clouds. The silence was deafening. When I reached the door, my pulse was so loud in my ears I almost couldn't hear anything else. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, to remember why I was here. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about ending the cycle of fear and lies once and for all. I slipped inside. The interior was worse than I'd expected, dark, cold, and smelling of mildew and gasoline. Broken machinery and crates were scattered everywhere. And then I heard voices. 2 men were arguing somewhere deeper inside. Their words were muffled, but I caught a name that made my blood run cold. Peter. I crept closer, my heart hammering, and ducked behind a stack of crates. Victor Hale stood in the center of the room, looking older than I expected but no less dangerous. His sharp suit was immaculate despite the grim surroundings, and his cold, calculating eyes scanned the room like he owned the world. He was flanked by 2 bulky men with guns strapped to their sides. One of them muttered something, and Victor snarled, "Peter Carter is a liability. He should have stayed gone. If he's poking around again, we end this for good. And if his niece knows anything." He trailed off, smirking. Well, accidents happen. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay silent. Victor thought he still controlled everything. He had no idea I was here, listening. But as I shifted my weight, a piece of gravel crunched under my boot. The sound was tiny, barely noticeable, but Victor's head snapped toward me instantly. "Who's there?" he barked. Panic surged through me. I turned to run, but a strong hand clamped down on my arm and yanked me out from behind the crates. "Look what we've got here," one of the men growled, dragging me into the open. Victor's eyes narrowed as he studied me. Well, he said slowly, his voice dripping with amusement. "If it isn't Emily Carter. My, you've grown." I glared at him, my fear drowned out by fury. "You killed my parents." Victor chuckled, as if I'd just told a joke. Killed? Such a harsh word. Let's just say, they got in my way. My hands shook, But I didn't back down. My mother was going to turn you in. She wanted to protect me. Victor's smirk faded into a sneer. Your mother was a fool. She thought she could fight me, but she didn't understand the game. People like me, we don't play by the rules. You destroyed my family, I shouted, my voice echoing off the metal walls. He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. No, Emily. Your family destroyed themselves. Your father owed me money, and your uncle made everything worse by interfering. I didn't have to light that fire. They did it for me. I froze, my stomach twisting. What are you talking about? Victor leaned in, his voice low and venomous. Your precious uncle Peter? He started that fire. Maybe not on purpose, but it was his fight that sparked it. And your father, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly innocent either. He begged me for mercy that night, and I gave him none. My chest heaved as his words sank in. Part of me wanted to deny it, to call him a liar. But deep down, I knew there was a grain of truth in his cruelty. Peter had admitted there was a struggle. He had admitted the fire wasn't intentional. But Victor was twisting it, trying to make me doubt everything. You're lying, I spat. Victor laughed. Believe what you want, girl. The only truth that matters is this. You and your uncle are both loose ends. And I don't like loose ends. He motioned to his men. Take her outside. Make it quick. One of the goons grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the door. Panic clawed at my chest. This couldn't be how it ended. I couldn't let Victor win, not after everything. Let her go. A voice roared from the doorway. Peter burst into the warehouse, a shotgun in his hands. His face was wild with rage and desperation. Peter, I cried, relief flooding me. Victor smirked. Well, speak of the devil. Peter didn't hesitate. He fired a warning shot into the air, the deafening blast making everyone freeze. Let her go, Victor, he growled. Victor raised his hand slightly, pretending to be calm. Now, Peter. Let's not be rash. We can work this out like civilized men. Civilized? Peter barked a bitter laugh. You threatened my niece. You destroyed our family. There's nothing civilized about you. Victor's eyes narrowed. Careful, Peter. You wouldn't want Emily to learn the full truth, would you? Peter's grip on the gun faltered for just a second. What are you talking about? I demanded, my gaze darting between them. Victor's smirk returned. Your uncle hasn't told you everything. Did he mention that your father wasn't just a victim in all this? He was working with me at first, taking my money, running little jobs on the side. He wasn't forced into this life, Emily. He chose it. I stared at Peter, my heart breaking. Is that true? Peter's face twisted with anguish. It's complicated. Victor pounced on the hesitation like a predator. See? Even now, he can't be honest with you. Your whole family was rotten from the inside, and you were just the last piece left to clean up. No, I screamed. In that split second of chaos, I stomped on the goon's foot and wrenched my arm free. Peter lunged forward, shoving me behind him as Victor reached for a hidden gun. Everything happened in a blur. 2 shots rang out. A cry of pain. The metallic clang of a gun hitting the floor. When the smoke cleared, Victor lay sprawled on the ground, clutching his chest. His men scattered, fleeing into the night like cowards. Peter lowered his shotgun, breathing heavily. It's over, he said, though his voice was hollow. I stared at Victor's lifeless form, my entire body trembling. It felt surreal, like I was outside myself watching it happen. But then I turned to Peter, my emotions boiling over. You should have told me the truth from the start, I said, my voice shaking with anger and grief. Peter's shoulders sagged. I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to hate your father or me. Tears streamed down my face. I don't hate you, Peter. I hate him. I glanced at Victor's body. But I hate the lies more. I've been living in the shadows of this secret my whole life. Peter nodded slowly, his own eyes glistening. No more shadows. From now on, We tell the truth. About everything. For the first time, I believed him. The weeks that followed were a blur of police reports, court hearings, and endless questions. Peter turned himself in, explaining the full story. Because he'd come forward willingly and provided evidence against Victor's operation, the authorities were surprisingly lenient. He wouldn't serve time, but he'd carry the weight of that night for the rest of his life. As for me, I went back to Grandma's house. It felt different now, emptier, quieter, but I kept her photo on the nightstand. She hadn't been perfect, but she had loved me fiercely. That love had been real, even if the lies had hurt. One evening, I sat on the porch with Peter, watching the sun set over the hills. "What happens now?" I asked softly. Peter gave me a sad smile. "Now, we live. We honor your mom and dad by moving forward. No more running. No more hiding." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep in my chest. For the first time in my life, the past didn't feel like a prison. And as the sky turned gold and crimson, I realized something important. The truth had hurt. It had shattered me, broken me open in ways I couldn't have imagined. But it had also set me free.